That's right, my boy. That's right, my boy. That's right, my boy. Like a king.
This is Big Boss Donno, a DC legend, talking about the one reason he kept going. And that same father, a year later, was found gone on a grave that was never meant to be his. So how does a man this full of life end up there? To really understand what happened on that quiet morning at the cemetery, you have to go back and meet the man first, because the headline only tells you the ending, and that ending makes no sense at all until you know everything that came before it. His name was Curtis Aiken Mallory, born on the first day of January in 1993, but almost nobody in the city ever called him Curtis. Around the way, they knew him as Curdy Top, as Big Donno, as Big Boss Donno. And if you came up anywhere in the DMV, that whole stretch of Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, then his name most likely rang a bell in your head. He was a D.C. area artist, muralist, rapper, and community mentor, all wrapped up in one loud and colorful person. And he wore every single one of those hats with the same fearless energy.
How we looking?
Shout out.
You know what
Hey, look.
going on? You know what I'm saying? Victory your shit. Long live Zeke.
The real
You know what I'm
niggas
saying?
outside.
We outside.
All the real niggas outside tonight, man.
Come get what you want.
You said only time you get down on your knees is shooting craps, nigga.
Ah! G
I
shit.
know the vibes.
G shit. Move your pussy right, Stink. You move right.
Hey, baby.
Now, to get the full picture of who Donno was, you have to be real about where he came from, because his story is not a clean one, and he would have been the first person to tell you that himself. Before the murals and before the mentoring, Donno carried a name in the streets. And the thing that really put him on the map across the DMV was a piece of jewelry. The story that the city still tells goes back to around 2015, when Donno was allegedly tied to a chain snatching at the Stadium nightclub in DC, connected to Quavo and Amigos. Community accounts say he walked off with the chain and then turned right around and flaunted it. And from that single moment, a whole legend was born, complete with rap disses flying back and forth and a diss track aimed straight at Quavo called Leg on Me. Years later, when an interviewer asked him what he ever did with that famous chain, Donno did not flinch or duck the question. He leaned right into it.
Nah, for real, at first I ain't believe that shit. You know why I hear people say that shit?
Yeah.
But you gotta go through the shit and realize, no, I'm like, okay, that's the feeling they was talking about.
Okay.
Like certain shit I usually do, when I would do, I wouldn't do it so louder now.
Yeah.
I'll do it smooth if I have to do it.
That little phrase, a hood trophy, tells you almost everything about the man he was back then, because he was bold, he was sharp with his mouth, and he did not bend for anybody. That same boldness, though, came with a price, and Donno ended up serving time before he came home and dropped his first day out freestyle to mark his return to the world. And here is where the story turns, because most people would have come home and gone right back to the same life, but Donno did something different, and he was honest about why. He sat there in that interview and admitted out loud that the old version of him was caught up in the gunplay and the robbing. And then he explained, plain and simple, how he decided to leave that behind. So that is exactly what he did. He cleaned up and he moved smarter. And the man who used to be known for taking things became a man known for giving things back. He started painting big, bright, beautiful murals on the kind of neglected walls that the city had forgotten about, turning rec centers and dead public spaces into art that spoke about heritage, identity, and staying away from the violence he once lived in.
Who did it, man? You want daddy to get him? What? You said it, bro. Yes, you did.
On top of that, He poured himself into mentoring young artists from rough neighborhoods, the same kind of neighborhoods that raised him. And the people who knew him say he saw something in all of us and treated those kids like they mattered. That is why, when the news finally broke, so many people in the DMV called him a real one and a role model, because they watched him turn his whole life around with their own eyes. But for all the murals he painted and all the kids he mentored, the thing that changed Donno the most was not the streets, and it was not prison, and it was not even the music. It was becoming a father. Razik D. Williams was born on the 11th of January in 2018 in Washington, D.C. And from the moment he came into Donno's world, everything shifted. Tributes from the people closest to him say that Donno and Razik met when the boy was about 8 months old, and that the little boy ended up changing the whole direction of his father's life, steering Donno towards something steadier and more meaningful than the road he had been on. This was a man who lived to provide for his people, and you could hear that drive in his own voice whenever he spoke about why he was grinding so hard.
Say your ABCs, huh? Say your ABCs. Say your ABCs, huh? Say your ABCs. A, it's for apple. B, it's for ball. C, it's for cup.
Razik was that reason, the people to feed, the whole purpose behind the hustle. He was a bright kid who went to school in the Woodridge area, and even his teachers and classmates remembered him for his strength and his positivity, so much so that they would later dedicate a memorial bench in his honor. By every account that exists, this was a happy, healthy little boy with his whole life waiting in front of him. And then, in the fall of 2023, that whole life got pulled out from under the family in a matter of days. It started small, the kind of thing any parent might brush off at first, with Razik seeming a little off balance, tilting his head to one side and having some trouble with his vision. Then, on the 8th of September in 2023, while he was at school, Razik fell and hit his head, leaving a bump on his forehead, and the family did what any family would do and rushed him to the ER for a scan just to be safe. The very next day, on the 9th of September, that scan came back, and the news was about as bad as news can get, because the imaging revealed an inoperable tumor sitting on his brainstem. The diagnosis was DIPG, which stands for diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, and if you have never heard of it, here is what you need to understand. DIPG is a rare, aggressive, and almost always fatal pediatric brain cancer that grows in the brainstem and spreads into the tissue around it. This makes surgery impossible because doctors simply cannot cut it out without destroying the part of the brain that keeps a child alive.
Look, tell him, eat. You tell him? Look.
That was a cheesy one.
Tell him stinky fifi.
You got your fifi?
This what I gotta go through. Real live man time shit. Y'all should see this shit. There you go.
It only strikes a few hundred children in the entire country each year. The treatment options are painfully limited, and the survival numbers are heartbreaking. In plain words, the doctors could try to slow it down with radiation, but there was no real cure waiting at the end of the road. Still, that family fought, and Razik fought hardest of all. He went through radiation treatment, and the people around him say he powered through it like the little superhero he was, defying some of the odds and inspiring a whole community that started rallying behind him with hashtags like Razik Strong and Razik Angel. For a few months, that little boy carried a weight that grown men could not imagine carrying, and he did it with a smile that kept his family holding on to hope. That hope is what makes the next part so cruel. A few months after the diagnosis, Razik was granted a Make-A-Wish trip, the kind of trip that is supposed to give a sick child a pocket of pure joy. But only about 14 hours into that trip, back in December of 2023, Razik suffered a major seizure and he was rushed to the hospital, where new scans showed the worst possible thing, that the tumor had now spread into other areas of his brain and into his spine. There was nothing left for the doctors to do.
What we tell him? I gotta get it and go, huh? What we say? Gotta go? I love you, man. You daddy, man? Yeah, I'm gonna drop.
On the second day of January in 2024, just days before he would have turned 6 years old, Razik passed away. His father had been there right by his side through the whole battle, loving him out loud. And now, Donno had to do the one thing no parent is ever built to do, which is bury his own child. Razik was laid to rest at Heritage Memorial Cemetery in Waldorf, Maryland, under a small headstone with his name on it. For most stories, that funeral would be the saddest moment and the end of the chapter. For Donno, though, that grave was not an ending at all. It was the beginning of a long, quiet year that would slowly pull him toward the same plot of ground where his son was already resting. On the outside, Donno kept moving after he lost his son, and that is the part that fooled a lot of people. He kept painting his murals, kept showing up for the young artists who looked up to him, and was even doing interviews about local slang and DMV culture as late as May of 2025. From a distance, it might have looked like a strong man slowly putting himself back together, but the people who were actually close to him saw something very different. They say Donno never fully recovered from losing Razik, and that as the months dragged on, he grew more and more despondent, carrying a visible weight that he could not seem to set down, no matter how much love the community poured back into him. Grief like that does not always look like crying in public. Sometimes it looks like a man who keeps working and keeps showing up while quietly sinking on the inside. And that is the version of Donno that the last year of his life slowly revealed.
Mental health to me is when you could go through life challenges and hardships and the times you could celebrate and still have a healthy way to cope throughout whatever it is that you're challenging with or struggling with. It takes daily practice. It doesn't come it's not nothing that you're born with. You're not born with how to deal with your mental health. You do have to manage your people, places, and things if something is wrong. And not even to say it like that, somebody who care about you, they should see some type of signs in you, because that's the difference. There's no difference, but that's what mental health is. But mental health, that's illness. Mental health illness then comes along later down the line with the mental health if you can't grasp to have a healthy mental state, no matter what you're going through.
Then, in the hours before the 21st of July in 2025, Donno went on his Instagram story and left a message that the whole city would soon be reading through tears. He wrote in his own raw words that he was so sorry, but he could not take it anymore. And in another line, he spoke straight to his mother, telling her, "I really tried, Ma. I tried. I tried." He reportedly spent some time around family and friends that night, and then he made his way to the cemetery, and he did not come back. On or around the 21st of July in 2025, Big Boss Donno was found dead at his young son's gravesite at Heritage Memorial Cemetery at just 32 years old. There was no sign of any struggle and no sign of anybody else involved. And every credible source that covered it described the same thing, that this was a man who had taken his own life out of a grief that simply never healed. The DMV broke down when the news got out. Donno was laid to rest in early August of 2025, and the days that followed filled up with vigils, with tribute murals painted in his honor, and with an outpouring of love from a community that suddenly wanted to talk about the things people usually keep buried. Over and over, the tributes came back to the same idea, that a devoted father had finally been reunited with his son, and that the rest of us needed to start checking on the strong ones in our lives before it was too late. Now here's the part that might surprise you, because as singular and as painful as Donno's story is, he is not the only father the world has watched walk this exact road. To understand just how powerful this kind of grief can be, you only have to look at a case from all the way across the globe.
See, I ain't gonna talk to y'all, I'm gonna talk to him. See, baby boy, the life I used to live was so crazy, you feel me? And this before I met you. I took mom and dad through a lot. I took it through, I'm talking about before, like during my teens all the way on up. I had a daughter. Everybody thought that was gonna work. That ain't even work. But when I met you, Sierra said, "You got a son." I'm like, "No, I don't." She sent me a picture of you. I'm like, hold up. Oh, he looked too like me. Oh, moving too fast. Hold up.
Back in 2016, there was a man named Arya Bar Natan, an elderly father whose only child, a soldier named Hayam, had been killed back in the 1990s during operations in Lebanon. For more than 2 decades, Arya poured his whole heart into keeping his son's memory alive, visiting the grave at the Mount Herzl Military Cemetery again and again. And in his later years, while he was battling his own terminal illness, he would sometimes even sleep at the gravesite when the sickness and sorrow got to be too much. Then, on a Friday in September of 2016, Arya went to his son's grave one last time, and he took his own life right there, and he was found at the place he had spent 20 years refusing to leave. A large study out of Denmark and Sweden in 2024 found that parents of children with cancer carry a significantly higher risk of suicide attempts in the first few years after the diagnosis, and that the risk runs especially high when the cancer is aggressive and the child is young, which is exactly the situation Donno was living through.
So I sent it to my mother. My mother said, "You so stupid." I'm like, So I met up with Sierra to take the test. And when I took the test, and not even before the test popped, when she rolled that back window down, you was sitting right there, and he looked at me. And he reached up, and I'm like, you don't even know who I am. But he looked at me so, like, with a look in his eyes, like, I know I was waiting on you. I'm like, yeah, this mine. Go ahead and swab the mouth. Mind you from that, I started getting them every weekend. Then I started getting them every week. And then they just end up being with me. But I end up, like, really taking in the responsibility that I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't know I was taking care of a little boy. I just was doing it. He changed my life in so many ways. I missed so many bullets, police, all types of stuff because I was busy with him. And the way God moved, he do stuff for a certain reason, right? And I'm so happy that God put you in my life, man.
Researchers who study grief have long pointed out that bereaved parents, the mothers and the fathers left behind, face a heavier weight than most people ever realize, and that a child's grave can quietly become a place of unfinished mourning that pulls a parent back over and over again. So, in the end, Big Boss Donno leaves behind 2 legacies that exist side by side. There is the bright one, full of murals on city walls, young artists he believed in, and a city that will keep calling him a DC legend for years to come. And there is the heavy one, a reminder to look closer at the people who seem fine, to check on the strong ones, and to take grief seriously, even when somebody is still showing up every day with a smile. Curtis Aiken Mallory loved his son and life with everything he had, and in the end, he chose to be next to him in death. And the most we can do with a story this heavy is let it push us to hold our own people a little closer. Have heard about a similar case before? Let me know in the comments section. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.